It is Friday, the 23rd day of June 2023. Hello and welcome to the News International Edition. We are coming to you live from our Vision Group headquarters here in Kampala, Uganda. I'm Emma Akwero. We start off today with the news coming in from Sudan, where images posted on the 21st of June 2023 show men firing their weapons while gathering at a gas station in the residential neighborhood of Omdurman, Khartoum's twin city, after the latest breached ceasefire between warring generals ended without any sign of an end to more than 2 months of war. Heavy clashes resumed on Wednesday morning between Sudan's military and the rapid support forces in and around the Sudanese capital Khartoum after a 72-hour ceasefire expired. As the three-day truce collapsed on early Wednesday, the sounds of gunfire and artillery could be heard in Khartoum and its sister city, Omdurman, sparking renewed fear among civilians. Here's a quick sneak peek to what has been happening. Now, away from Sudan, in Ukraine, residents living in Russian-annexed Crimea are unfazed by the fighting or potential water supply cuts after the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam. The dam creates a reservoir which feeds the Soviet-built North Crimean Canal that supplies the region. In the aftermath of the destruction on June 6th, the water level in the reservoir has fallen steeply, raising concerns among Russian officials that it could even run dry.
The Kakhovka Dam creates a reservoir which feeds the Soviet-built North Crimean Canal that supplies the region. In the aftermath of the dam's destruction on June 6th, which Kyiv and Moscow have blamed on each other, the water level in the reservoir fell steeply. That raised concerns among Russian officials that the canal could run dry. However, residents of Simferopol are optimistic there will be no shortages, so no cause for alarm. In my environment, in my family, there are no worries. The only place where there are any worries is outside of that. Some people panic, they are very afraid. But this is very rare, and mostly these are not local people. The people who have moved here, the guests, they are very afraid. Matilda Galshkina, a makeup artist from the Simferopol region, believes the government would never leave them without water. The government will not leave us without water in any case. In the worst-case scenario, there are filters for seawater. Maybe we can save a little. Perhaps they will turn off the water as they did before. They will turn it off for a certain time. But it's also not all that scary. We all went through this. We all know this. We sat without water and without electricity and survived. Bachanikova said she thought any supply disruption was impossible. Right now, the wells are full of water, the river is overflowing and the reservoirs are all full. There can be no question of any problems with water. She also said she did not particularly feel any impact from the fighting, which has intensified in recent weeks. Crimea was taken over by Russia in 2014 and is increasingly a target of strikes and sabotage attacks, which Russia has accused Ukraine of carrying out. Following the annexation of Crimea, water supplies in the canal fell and there were shortages in the peninsula. That changed after Russian forces took control of the entire canal after the start of Moscow's offensive in Ukraine in February 2022. Moscow last year blamed Ukraine for a blast on the main bridge connecting Crimea to the Russian mainland.
Now, a Russian court has rejected an appeal to release U.S. reporter Evan Gershkovich from detention in Moscow ahead of his trial on contested espionage charges. Gershkovich, whose arrest by Russia's FSB security services in late March sparked a global outcry and appears in a glass cage in Moscow court.
This was a procedural hearing appealing the conditions of his continued detention, and we were extremely disappointed by the denial of his appeal. Despite Russian officials' public assertions about Evans' activities, let me reiterate the U.S. government's firm position. The charges against him are baseless. He is an innocent journalist who was carrying out journalistic activities and has been wrongfully detained.
Now, the prospects for recovering the remains of the 5 people who were aboard a submersible that suffered a catastrophic implosion in the North Atlantic are unknown, says Rear Admiral John Magua, the 1st District Commander of the U.S. Coast Guard. The small sub named Titan disappeared on Sunday as it descended to the Titanic, which sits more than 2 miles, nearly 4 kilometers below the ocean's surface and 400 miles off the coast of Newfoundland in Canada.
All 5 people aboard a submersible that went missing near the wreck of the Titanic died likely in an instant when their vessel suffered what the U.S. Coast Guard said Thursday was a catastrophic implosion in the ocean depths. The somber announcement ended a multinational search and rescue operation that captivated the world since the tiny tourist craft disappeared in the North Atlantic 4 days ago. Rear Admiral John Magua spoke about the incident to reporters in Boston without divulging information regarding discovery of remains of the 5 dead passengers.
On behalf of the United States Coast Guard and the entire Unified Command, I offer my deepest condolences to the families. I can only imagine what this has been like for them, and I hope that this discovery provides some solace during this difficult time. This is an incredibly unforgiving environment down there on the seafloor, and the debris is consistent with a catastrophic implosion of the vessel. And so we'll continue to work and continue to search the area down there, but I don't have an answer for prospects at this time.
On board were British explorer Hamish Harding, French submarine expert Paul Henry Naglet, Pakistani-British tycoon Shahzada Dawood and his son Suleiman, and Stockholm Rush CEO of the subs operator Ocean Gate Expeditions. Ocean Gate said its hearts are with the 5 souls and every member of their families during this tragic time. John, the 1st District Commander of the U.S. Coast Guard, said questions about what truly happened will be answered accordingly.
I know that there's also a lot of questions about how, why, and when did this happen. And so, you know, those are questions that we will collect as much information as we can on now, while the governments are meeting and discussing, you know, what an investigation of this nature of a casualty might look like.
According to John Magua, analysis showed debris found on the seafloor 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic was consistent with an implosion of the sub's pressure chamber. Authorities said they later learned the pieces included the sub's tail cone and front and back ends with its pressure hull. Magua said the Coast Guard could not be sure when or why the vessel imploded and declined to be drawn on whether remains of the men would be retrieved, adding that the process of demobilizing personnel and vessels from the scene would soon begin, but unmanned robots would continue operations on the seabed for now. Ocean Gate Expeditions charged $250,000 for a seat on the sub. In a 2018 lawsuit, its former director of marine operations raised concerns about the experimental and untested design of Titan. The Titanic International Society said it could be time to replace manned missions to the wreck with autonomous machines.
A very sad end to what was meant to be an exciting expedition. Now, from Jenin, Palestinians checked the site of an Israeli drone strike near the Jenin, which killed 3 members of a terrorist cell in a rare West Bank drone attack, the Israel army said, as violence there escalates, with at least 13 Palestinians and 4 Israelis dead this week. A U.S. State Department spokesperson said in Washington that is deeply concerned by rising violence in the West Bank. The surge in violence linked to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict so far this year has killed at least 174 Palestinians, 25 Israelis, a Ukrainian, and an Italian.
Israel's military on Wednesday killed 3 members of a terrorist cell in a rare West Bank drone strike, the army said, as violence there escalates with at least 13 Palestinians and 4 Israelis dead this week. The army announced the strike after a Palestinian man was killed earlier Wednesday in an occupied West Bank village attacked by hundreds of Israelis. We live in a safe area. It was 9:30 in the evening. There was a shooting in the area. Then we were surprised by an Israeli Air Force strike.
تفاجأنا إنه بقصف صاروخي من طيران للإسرائيليين.
Intelligence led by Israeli Defense Forces IDF personnel to identify the cell inside a suspicious vehicle after the cell carried out a shooting adjacent to the town of Jalama near Jenin in the northern West Bank, an army statement said.
كان في سيارة مشتعلة هون.
There was a car on fire about 100 meters away from my house, and ambulances came and they were prevented from approaching the site. A civil defense vehicle arrived, and after a while, around 10 minutes, they extinguished the car and took out those who were inside. Then an Israeli bulldozer and 7 Israeli patrolling vehicles arrived. The strike is the first in the West Bank by Israelis since August 2006, a Palestinian intelligence source told reporters. Previously, the source said it was the first since 2005, before reporting 2 militants had been killed in a strike in 2006. Kamal Abu Arab, deputy Jenin governor, said there were 3 dismembered bodies inside the car, which he said had been hit by missiles. Rawoub cited information from firefighters sent to extinguish the blaze which engulfed the vehicle. Earlier, residents of Tumus Aya put the number of Israeli settlers involved in the attack on their village at between 200 and 300, while journalists reported scorched homes, buildings and wounded people being evacuated by ambulances. The reprisals came hours after mourners held a funeral for a teenager killed in a Palestinian shooting targeting Israelis nearby. Israel has occupied the West Bank since the Six-Day War of 1967. Excluding annexed East Jerusalem, the territory is now home to around 490,000 Israelis who live in settlements considered illegal under international law. While protecting the firefighters, Israeli police became the target of violence by dozens of Palestinians, a police statement said. The tally compiled from official sources includes combatants as well as civilians, and on the Israeli side, 3 members of the Arab minority.
Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko has filed a criminal complaint against President Macky Sall. Let's go for a short break, but we'll return with this and more stories.